Alrighty, welcome into the Gary Ayd Show here on the Cave, cavetalkradio.com, and of course the Cave Talk Radio app. Great to have you aboard, Gary Ayd with you. And we got a full show today, a lot to get to, so let's dive right into it. We're going to have a busy rest of the week with Bomber and Smash coverage. A full interview schedule will be posted on our website. Well, I'm sorry, on our Facebook channel, probably later today. My expectation is that we'll be airing at least 2, maybe 3 bits of combined Smash and Bombers content per day over the next few days, starting tomorrow. The Easter holiday sort of put everything back a day, so what would normally air today with the Smash Players of the Week, we'll probably end up airing tomorrow, and we'll move everything back. Like I said, we'll have a full schedule posted later today on Cave Talk Radio NY on Facebook. So definitely follow us there if you haven't already. Also download the app. And we are presented by Days Coffee, the official coffee of the Gary Ayd Show. It is 85% on average, less caffeine, still gives you a great pickup, tastes great, easier on your stomach, better for your health, patented enzyme formulation by a retired cancer pathologist. Check them out on North Street. That's Days Coffee. You can also get a great deal, radioonlydeals.com. Buy a $4 gift certificate for just $2 right there at radioonlydeals.com. So I'm not a big golf guy. We barely touched the Masters. We sent the obligatory congratulations to Rahm for winning it. But if you're a big golf aficionado, this is not the show you come to for that type of content. That's fine. You can't be everything to everybody in this business. But, the one thing that always gets me going when we talk about golf is Tiger Woods. But not for the reason you might think. Not for the reason that surely the networks and the league continue to push him and trot his decrepit, aged, destroyed body out there knowingly without any chance of, forget winning, even being competitive, and hey, half the time even finishing an event or making a cut. I mean, this guy is so far gone, so far and away past his prime, that it's really criminal, in my opinion, to keep trotting him out there. Tiger is a proud guy, a competitive guy, and maybe he's delusional too. I don't know Tiger Woods, so I don't know. So maybe he's delusional. But if he's not delusional, he has to be going out there for reasons that are not fully or wholly his own, or maybe even partially his own. Knowing he's competitive, knowing he's proud. If he's not delusional, he knows he's not capable of winning anymore. He probably knows he's lucky to finish an event. And yet they still trot him out there. He still is the headline on every summary box score standings during the events. And you have to wonder, when does this end? When do they finally stop? I mean, look, I'm in the same business. I understand. You play the hits, you sell what sells. You give the people what they consume. I totally get that. But at the same time, man, is it hard to watch. It really is. And the thing about it to me is that when I'm old enough, I vividly remember almost all of Tiger's prime and the dominant force he was. And so I understand where this residue desire to keep putting him out there comes from, because he's the only person for most people who are alive today that ever really drew them to golf as a spectator sport. Much the same way Lance Armstrong was the only person who ever drew most people to cycling as a spectator sport, at least the Tour de France. Much like, Serena Williams, for a lot of people, was one of the few female athletes that was a consistent draw, and really built the fan base of her sport. There are a handful of these people, and it's even more pronounced in the non-traditional team sports when you get one of these greats because, yes, Michael Jordan brought more people to the game of basketball, there's no question about it. But he was far from the only draw, not even just when he played, but throughout the game's history. Tiger Woods is almost one of one in the history of golf. Maybe Jack had a little of this, Arnie and Player, the great trio from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. But most people that consumed that are either no longer with us, very old, or they represent a smaller part of the remaining demographic, the remaining audience. So, and they likely are already fans who would watch anyway. So Tiger brings in the non-golf fans, the casuals, the cliches, all the marketing cliches. He expands the audience. So that's why they're doing it. And I get it. I do. But at the same time, it's just brutal. I mean, this guy can't walk. He's talking about playing on the senior circuit because he can use a golf cart. Imagine, the guy's not 80. Was he 50? Not even quite, probably. Well, I mean, we're talking about golf carts. This guy's body is broken. It's time to let him go. And I'm not 100% sure, but I'm about 65, 75% sure he's still playing for reasons that are not his own. I truly believe that. And at a certain point, I don't want to be overly dramatic or melodramatic here, but at a certain point, it becomes almost abusive, with if he is really going out there for others, at what point has he paid his debt to those others? At what point has he done enough to warrant his retirement? Because the guy can't play anymore. He can't compete. His body won't let him. And I understand his historic greatness. I remember it. But I'm not a big, this is probably the first time in my whole career that I'm about to say what I'm about to say. I don't believe that you can really ruin a legacy by, quote, playing too long. But if there was ever a time where that has begun to happen, it's now. And it's because of the general longevity of golfers that this is possible. No other sport could this really happen in. Because the only way that, and this is new to me. I'm observing this with golf in real time. The reason maybe Tiger's legacy is beginning to be diminished or has already been diminished by his extended hanging on for reasons that may not be his own is because unlike other sports, let's say you're Patrick Ewing, right? He hung on a few years past when he was effective, but it did nothing to affect his legacy because the people that watched him in Orlando and in Seattle were the same people that watched his dominance in New York. There wasn't enough time that had elapsed from when he was great to when he kind of, crawled across the proverbial career finish line with those two franchises. So there wasn't enough time for another demographic, another audience demographic, a younger audience to associate with him that mediocrity. There wasn't enough time for people to associate mediocrity with Hakeem Olajuwon. A guy that maybe there has been enough time, Udonis Haslem, was never a star player. He was a useful role player starter, the quality starter in the first half of his career. But guys who are not all-time greats don't have legacies to ruin, right? Tiger Woods is obviously an all-time great. Patrick Ewing was an all-time great. See, in Tiger's case,
if you take his 2008 victory on one leg as his last great moment, I know he won the Masters one time since then. It was sort of an anomaly, almost like a flashback. But short of that one moment just a couple of years ago, it's really been since 2008 since Tiger was truly consistently great. So that one tournament he was great, but he wasn't great before or directly after that. And he hadn't been great really since 2008. So if you take 2008 as the last year of Tiger Woods' greatness, you go 97 to 2008, his period of greatness. And now we're going from 2008, 2009 to present. That is almost 15 years, folks. Think of it this way. If you were born in the year 2000, you're now 23 years old, right? Or maybe still 22, going to turn 23 soon. You really probably don't remember Tiger Woods being a great golfer. You know who he is if you're a sports fan. You know, intellectually, he was a great golfer, but you don't feel it. You don't associate with it. You didn't experience it. And you probably just think of him as like an advertising pitch man who happens to his pulpit, his medium of pitch is not a TV commercial, but a golf tournament. That's probably how you associate him in your mind, whether you realize it or not. So unless you're about 30 years old or older, you don't really remember Tiger Woods as a great golfer. So there's been a whole new generation, not just of players, but of fans who don't have any real memories of Tiger Woods as a great golfer. They just know him as Tiger Woods, the great golfer. Like they're just the same way a lot of people just know Jordan as Jordan. They don't have memories of him playing. And because Tiger in that time with that group has created so many memories of inadequacy, ineptitude, mediocrity, injury, sadness, I think he might be the first all-time great whose lingering is truly affecting how he's going to be remembered long term, because there's now a whole generation of people whose memories of him are going to be one of just a kind of a decrepit old guy who was famous. That's going to be the memories of a lot of people with Tiger Woods. And the longer this goes on, it's already going to be the case for one generation. This goes on another 4 or 5 years, it might be 2 generations that remember him that way. And these are long-standing memories, folks. These are the type of things that these people will take into their 40s, 50s, and beyond. And it affects, it matters. And legacies like this only matter for the greats. They don't really matter for the rank and file people. So I think Tiger Woods is the first all-time great that I've ever watched who is likely to have his legacy diminished by the fact that he's played too long. I am not a person that believes that's usually possible. And I don't think it's possible in other sports, because I think the only way you can have that happen is to hang on long enough in a diminished enough state to have your impressions on a new generation be that of your diminished self. In other words, people that remember you and watched you when you were great, I don't think are going to remember you in your diminished state. They're going to remember you by and large in your athletic peak. People who weren't old enough to watch you at that point can't, right? So I think that is what makes this unique, is golf enables you to hang on long enough because of, the ability to play it okay later into your life versus other sports. So I think Tiger's in a unique position here that unfortunately is working against him, and I feel bad for the guy. All right, well, that will do it for our opening rant. Coming up, we got the question of the day. A lot of NBA today. The Rays off to a 10-0 start. We'll discuss what that means. Also, a change maybe in the way alcohol is sold at games, or at least how long it's sold. So a lot to get to, and we got the question of the day coming up next. It's the Gary Ayd Show, back after this here on The Cave.
coffee lovers, Middletown is now officially home to the home run of our favorite beverage, Days Coffee. Days' patented blend contains approximately 85% less caffeine than other coffees, which makes it better for you, yet unlike decaf coffee, still gives you that great pickup and tastes amazing. Formulated by a retired cancer pathologist, Dr. Grant Lee, Days Coffee is fermented with a patented enzyme that until now required a complex and thus expensive sourcing and production process. With Dr. Lee's formulation, this enzyme's great health benefits can now be brought to your cup quicker, easier, and cheaper than ever before. Here's how you get a hold of this game-changing cup of joe. Go over to radioonlydeals.com and get a $4 gift certificate to Days Coffee for just $2. That's radioonlydeals.com to buy your single-use digital gift certificate for Days Coffee. Radioonlydeals.com. That's radioonlydeals.com. Enjoy the preferred coffee of the Gary Ayd Show. Enjoy Days Coffee.
The president picked Michigan, and the first lady invited Iowa. I am KO, back in 1 minute with your sports question of the day.
Would you like to hear better for as little as 10 cents a day? Now you can with the all-new Audion hearing aids. The average hearing aid lasts about 3 years. Ours, at only $99 a pair, means you're paying as little as 10 cents a day to hear better. And to make things even better, we'll give you a 45-day money-back guarantee. Skip the doctor and get hearing aids delivered straight to your door. We've eliminated all the middlemen to offer you a direct price of only $99 a pair. Join over 300,000 people just like you who took advantage of our 45-day trial offer. Now you can hear better too for just 10 cents a day. Call now and order your $99 pair of Audion hearing aids with a 45-day money-back guarantee. Plus, get free 3 to 5 day shipping.
800-226-1471. 800-226-1471. That's 800-226-1471.
First Lady Jill Biden ran afoul with Tigers fans after inviting national title runner-up Iowa to come to the White House along with the NCAA championship-winning LSU team. The First Lady's PR team has since walked back the invitation, but it was too little too late for LSU star Angel Reese. Reese not only called out the First Lady for inviting Iowa, she tore into the president for picking Michigan over LSU in the second round of the women's tournament. Question: do you think Jill Biden's Iowa invitation was a show of good sportsmanship or one heck of a participation trophy?
Definitely the latter. It's obvious to any person who has any connection to sport or competition of any kind that you don't invite someone who didn't win or a team that didn't win to the winner's circle. You're not going to see a NASCAR race with both the first and second place driver in the winner's circle. Right? They're not going to make a second Larry O'Brien trophy for the team that lost in the finals, even if it was a great series. They're not going to do a second Stanley Cup. Like, this is stupid. If you think of the White House visit as essentially a championship trophy 2.0, which is what it's traditionally been, you obviously, well, maybe not so obviously to Jill Biden, you obviously only send that invitation to the person or team that won. Obvious, right? Should be. Clearly it wasn't. I thought Reese and everyone else had reason to be upset or peeved at that. I think they could have handled it a lot better. I think they could have just shrugged it off as an elderly lady who's really just not with it or not sensitive to the realities of competition. I think they could have shrugged it off and just kept it moving, so to speak. Waited for the thing to be rescinded, which it was, and then, accept the invitation to the White House as the winning team. But I understand their gripe about it. I mean, I'm griped about it. Look, you don't invite someone who lost to the White House. You just don't. And the whole thing. Now, the second piece of that, them being upset that Biden took Michigan over LSU in the second round of the tournament. Oh, get over yourself. So what? It's a crapshoot. Everyone knows that. And anyone that's ever followed college basketball, men or women's, knows that in most years, it's just a crapshoot. It's a series of one and done games. Anything can happen. Don't get crazy over that. That part, they're being childish and petty and just overly proud, and that I'm not down with. But I do understand their frustration with the double invitation. And I'll tell you this: if I was Iowa, I would have been embarrassed. I would have not wanted to be there. I'm not happy. I'm not celebrating a victory. I'm still probably nursing a tough loss. I'm not in a celebratory mood. I'm just not down with it. I'm really not. So I understand Reese's frustration with one part of this. The second part of it, I think they need to grow up and be a little more mature. But these type of as we call them, participation trophies, they are not conducive to the mentality of sports. Sports, maybe more than any other element of society, definitely has a win or go home type of makeup to it. It definitely has a scorekeeping mechanism that other fields, other entertainment options really don't have. Yeah, you could win an Oscar, you could win a Grammy, but ultimately those are voted and they're by their nature subjective. Just like individual awards in team sports are subjective. MVP, Cy Young, Defensive Player of the Year, all that stuff. Who wins the title is not subjective. That is objective. And in a sport where having the best player or one of the best players makes such a big difference, basketball, usually the best player or one of the few best players in the league at that time is on the championship team, as was the case here with LSU. I think that empirical structure, that clear scoreboard, is the opposite of politics. Politics is the definition of bureaucracy, total lack of accountability. Everyone's blameless, so no one if no one has blame, no one can claim victory. It's the swamp, right? It just is. That's what politics is. It's bureaucracy. It's lacking accountability. No one is crowned the champion. No one is crowned the GOAT. Everyone just goes along to get along, all in the name of the system. That's what politics is. So it's understandable that a lifelong bureaucrat wife wouldn't understand what type of misstep this really was. I'm sure it shocked her, the blowback. She was like, why? They both were so great. Oh my goodness. It's not how sports works. Of course they were mad. I bet you everyone was mad. I mean, Iowa, LSU, probably the NCAA, though they'll never say it because they're a bureaucracy too. It was just bad. So I get it. But now that this is all, blown over, move on, go to the White House, take the photos, do what you're going to do. Don't go out there saying we'll go to the Obamas. Like, no. That goes back to what I was saying about Angel Reese a few weeks ago. I was under the impression she was kind of above all that she was going to be more of a unifying vessel to kind of market behind and give the women's game a chance to really grow. With that statement, she showed that, at least right now, she's not that. She is just as divisive, just as petty as a lot of other people on matters of skin color and matters of emotional sensitivity. Like, grow up a little bit. I'm with you on this Jill Biden thing. It was stupid. But the Joe Biden talking about Michigan beating you and then saying we'll go to the Obamas instead of the Bidens, the actual presidents. Stop. Stop with that stuff. I'm not down with that. I'm just not. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We got a lot more to get to coming up next. We're going to talk about the Rays fast start and the matchup breakdown of the Hawks and Heat, and also the Timberwolves and the Lakers. Rudy Gobert suspended. We'll give you an update on that. That's all coming up. It's the Gary Ayd Show rolling on here on The Cave.
Face the facts. You made a mistake. You made a bad purchase. A timeshare is not an investment. It's a money pit that continues forever. If you use your timeshare, that's great. But if you don't and you want to legally get out of your contract, call my friends right now at the Timeshare Exit Hotline. They're an experienced team of lawyers who help good people like you get out of a timeshare contract that they just don't want. Don't throw away your money on maintenance fees. Use it for things you really want. We can help you end your timeshare contract and stop the money drain immediately. If you're ready to move on with your timeshare, call our team right now.
Cancel your timeshare now with a free call. 800-741-9557. 800-741-9557. 800-741-9557. That's 800-741-9557. If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. Ouch! Well, by wearing a small remote device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers. If you administer insulin 3 or more times per day or use an insulin pump, call now and learn how a CGM can help you.
Painless. No more pricking my finger.
No finger pricks.
Convenience. They delivered it free and they took care of all the paperwork.
You can reduce pain right away. Plus, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you spend more time in range. And if you have insurance, you can get a new CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. Call now and get free shipping of your new CGM. Plus, we'll bill your insurance for you. 800-826-5884. 800-826-5884. 800-826-5884. That's 800-826-5884.
All right, we're back here on the Gary Ayd Show. Gary Ayd with you. It's good to have you aboard. So, all right. Tonight is the first two games of the NBA play-in, one from each conference. You have the 7-8 matchup in the East, the Hawks and the Heat. And then you have the 7-8 matchup in the West, the Lakers and the Timberwolves. Of course, you have to play that one first because the loser of that plays the winner of the 9-10 matchup in both cases, and the winner moves on to play the 2 seed. So let's talk about these two matchups for a second. But before we do that, one of them, let's discuss a storyline involving the second one, the Lakers and Timberwolves. Now, as you remember from yesterday, Rudy Gobert punched his own teammate Kyle Anderson on television, and basically, well, now he's suspended. I got to tell you something. I don't like this suspension at all. And it wasn't clear to me if this was a league suspension or a team suspension. But either way, I have the same opinion, which is this. No one got hurt here except people on the same team, right? So, yeah, Kyle Anderson might have gotten hurt, getting punched in the face, but they're both on the Timberwolves. No one gets hurt by the punishment for this, except for the same people that were hurt by the transgression. So, in effect, you're punishing oneself for hurting oneself. It's a stupid thing to do. It just doesn't make any sense. Punishment, by its definition, is supposed to be retribution for a victim. You can't get revenge on yourself. You can't get retribution or even the score or settle an aggrievement with yourself. It's like, okay, I'm poor. I only have $12 and I need 15. That $12 is in my right pocket. Let me move it to my left pocket. Well, you still have $12. You can't rob yourself. It's not robbing Peter to pay Peter. It's robbing Peter to pay Paul. It takes a second person to do, right? You can't rob yourself. You can't punish yourself to make good for damage you did to yourself. It doesn't work. So this whole thing is dumb. It reminds me a lot of when Plaxico Burress shot himself in the leg in a club a while back, years ago. And he was summarily, basically heavily punished by the league, and it effectively ended his career. And at the time, I remember thinking, why are they coming down on this guy so hard? No one else got hurt but him. And it was a petty reason. The permit he had, which he had legally to have that gun in New York, was registered to him. It was his gun. Those papers were not transferable one state to the next. Some states accept them. There's reciprocity. Some states there isn't. So essentially a technicality of interstate politics cost him the latter part of his NFL career. And I thought it was so bad because there were no victims in it except him. So that's how I feel with this. The only people getting hurt by this suspension are the Timberwolves. So I don't know if it's the league or the team that suspended them, but it doesn't matter. Ultimately, this was a victimless crime. The only victim here was intra-squad. And if it's the team suspending them, and they're trying to like make the case that everyone's equal, blah, 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 spare me the nonsense. I don't want to hear it. Everyone in the world knows there's no such thing as an equal hierarchy on a sports team. The best players, the better players have a different set of rules than the rest of the guys. That's just how it is. That's the case in all walks of life. Sports, politics, business, you name it. You don't think the top sales guy is getting better treatment than the bottom sales guy? You don't think he has more privileges, gets to come into the office later, gets to leave later, gets to work remote more? Of course he does, or she does. Of course. It's just an idiotic thing to think that there's some type of equality. You are as equal as your performance is superior. That's all there is to it. And, one other thing about this is it totally decimates the chances of the Timberwolves, in my opinion, getting to the game itself. It totally decimates their chances to win this thing, I believe. Because now all of a sudden, you have a front line that lacks any size. They are going against Anthony Davis, who's finally playing great basketball. And it's all their own fault. I think they're going to get killed tonight. I just don't see any way that they are able to get rebounds, protect the paint, slow down or limit Anthony Davis's efficiency and effectiveness. Their best shot is to get in the head of Davis, try to get him out of sorts, not let him physically impose his will, and then hope that Towns and Edwards are putting up shots at a fast pace. Because I'll tell you this about Towns. He ain't guarding anybody. He's not guarding Anthony Davis. He wouldn't guard Antonio Davis right now. And he's like 50. This guy can't defend anybody. He doesn't want to. He's not going to start now. So if you're expecting a Towns and Davis matchup for the ages, Towns might have a lot of points. Davis is going to have a lot of points. So it might look on paper like it was a duel, but you can mark my words, Towns ain't guarding Anthony Davis, at least not effectively if they put him on him at all. It's not going to happen. So I really think that this suspension does nothing to hurt anyone, but it devastates the Timberwolves, which is the team that committed the infraction against itself. This would be a whole different story if Rudy Gobert went over and punched someone on the other team. But that's not what happened. It's just not. So it's stupid. I'm just not on board with it at all. As far as the other matchup today, Miami and what do we got? Miami and the Hawks, Atlanta. I don't see Atlanta winning this game. I look at this from a matchup standpoint, and I ask myself, who on the Hawks is guarding Butler and Hero? Clint Capella is a good player. He can maybe match Bam defensively, rebounding wise, but Bam brings you offensive skills that Capella does not. And it's funny to say this because the Hawks averaged so many more points than the Heat this year. I think 118 to 109. But in a matchup sense, and the record on the season bears this out, I just think the Heat will have an easier time scoring against the Hawks than the Hawks will have against the Heat. The Hawks average more points, 118 to 109, but the Heat won this season series convincingly 3-1. And that's because they play both sides of the ball, and their defense is so good that it allows their offense, which at times is brutal to watch, to be just good enough most nights to win. And I think that the Hawks will be held to about 111, 112 points. And I think the Heat, with the matchup advantages I just highlighted, will be able to score just enough to win that game. I don't think this game's going to be a blowout because I don't believe the Heat can score enough, even with limiting the Hawks to well below their season average. I don't think they can score enough to blow out a team above that diminished number. Because even at a diminished number, the Hawks are going to get 110, 112 points. And that's doing a great job defensively for Miami because they average 118, right? I don't think the Heat are capable of scoring 125, 130 against anybody to blow out a team that scores 110 or so. So I think this game will be close, but I don't think it will feel close. I think the score will be close, but I think those watching the game will come away with the impression that Miami dominated the game, even if the score ends up being close. I just foresee Miami being able to impose its style, its will, its physicality on the Hawks and win this game with a convincing performance, if not a resolute final score. That's the way I see this working out. So I see Miami going on to play Boston in the first round. I see Atlanta then playing the loser of the 9-10 matchup, which is Toronto and what was it? I believe I forget who they were. Oh, Chicago. Yeah, Toronto, Chicago. I think Chicago wins that matchup. I think Atlanta plays Chicago, and I think Atlanta loses to Chicago. I think Atlanta is not a playoff team this year. I think Chicago is the best of those three teams, Toronto, Chicago, Atlanta, even though they have the worst record of the three. I think the matchups favor them in the playoffs, and I got them advancing out of the 9-10 matchup all the way to the first round where they'll get killed by Milwaukee, who's the 1 seed. But that's a different story. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll finish up the hour with a little baseball. The Rays are off to a 10-0 start. What does that mean exactly, and how are they doing this? And then you have beer changing the game. We'll talk about that as well. It's the Gary Ayd Show here on The Cave.
Do you want to save money on your next flight? Then pick up the phone and call. That's right, call. Because the best prices are not online. They're with SmartFares. See, SmartFares has special deals with the airlines. When they have unsold seats, they use SmartFares to fill them. So you get airline tickets at crazy low prices. They have access to great prices and discounts at over 500 different airlines. Plus 300,000 hotels and rental car companies. Their prices are too low to publish online. With the extra money you'll save, you can book another trip or treat yourself to dinner or shopping. So stop searching all of those travel sites to find the lowest price on your next flight. Let one of our SmartFares expert travel agents find the best price for you. Call SmartFares today and get ready to see the world with a fat wallet.
800-370-2460. 800-370-2460. 800-370-2460. That's 800-370-2460.
Come on, you watch the news. Be prepared to pay more taxes. And if you owe back taxes or haven't filed in a few years, get ready. The IRS, the largest collection agency in the world, will be coming after you with the power to collect taxes by any means they want to. Hey, they can freeze your bank account, your passport, even padlock your business. Oh, good times. Look, if the IRS claims you owe them $5,000 or more in back taxes and they're coming after you, don't panic. Call my friends at Get a Tax Lawyer first. Their job is to negotiate with the IRS and save you money. They're experts at it. That's all they do, and you can trust them. In some cases, they have reduced a $50,000 tax bill to less than $1,000. If you owe the IRS $5,000 or more in back taxes, call now for a free consultation.
Call 800-649-8617. 800-649-8617. 800-649-8617. That's 800-649-8617.
All right, so the Tampa Bay Rays are off to a 10-0 start, their best start in franchise history, and everyone's already talking about it. And I got to tell you, I have a lot of opinions on this. First of all, good for them. I'm surprised, and I thought they were going to be finally taking a step back this year. And look, it's early. We're not even 10% into the season yet. A lot can happen, a lot will happen. But getting off to this kind of start gives you a lot of, as we learned with the Yankees last year, gives you a lot of leeway for the rest of the year. They're already up 4 games against the Blue Jays and the Yankees, 5 against the other 2 teams in their division, the Red Sox and the Orioles, the former of which they just beat 1-0 last night to get their 10th straight win to open the season. So that second game of that series starts today at 4:00 or 6:40, excuse me. Now, here's the context. They have beaten so far. They beat the Tigers 3 straight at home to open the season. They then went on the road and beat the Nationals 3 times in a row. And then they came home and hosted the Athletics for 3, beat them 3 times. And yesterday they beat the Red Sox at home 1-0. Red Sox are 5-5. And they're by far the best of the teams they've played so far. By a ton. Detroit 2-7. Name 3 players from them. I dare you. Hell, name 1. Oakland 2-8. Same thing. Washington 4-7. Who they got now? I mean, Strasburg's injured. He's 100 years old. He's always hurt. Soto's gone. Who's on their team? Like, now, it's fair to say who's on the Rays team. Okay, got it. At least I could say Randy Arozarena. At least I know at least one guy. I mean, these teams they beat are the bottom of the barrel. Bottom of the bottom. And it's not like these are teams that, like, okay, you could say, well, the Cardinals, Gary, they're 3-7. Yeah, but there's an expectation that the Cardinals will be a competitive team by the end of the year. There is no expectation. Those 3 teams I just mentioned, if you were to tell me the 5 worst teams in Major League Baseball going into the year, all 3 of them would have been on your list. You would have included probably the Diamondbacks. You might have included the Colorado Rockies, maybe the Marlins. These were the teams. That's the whole list. By the way, the Diamondbacks are in first place right now. So, there you go. So there's a little flukiness to these standings. That's why, it's cliche and it's boring and stuff. Oh, it's early and stuff. But it's true. Look, does anyone think the Diamondbacks are going to finish with a better record than the Dodgers or the Padres? Really? Even the Giants. You think the Diamondbacks are going to have a better record than the Giants? You think somehow the Pirates are going to have a better record than the Cardinals? The Reds are going to have a better record than the Cardinals? There's no way. But you can believe if I told you, the Nationals and the Tigers and the Athletics are all going to finish last in their division this year. You'll be like, okay, yeah, that's right. Maybe you would have a little quip about, maybe it could be the Marlins in the NL East. Okay, fine. And maybe it will be. I agree. But there's no doubt about it. Oakland's the worst team in their division. There's no question about it that Detroit's the worst team in their division. Maybe Kansas City. So maybe there is a little question. They are among the worst teams in all of baseball. And that's a guarantee. That's going to stay that way. Time will hold that true. Now, Tampa's a competitive team. And I think getting off to the fast start like they have will give them the ability to remain at or near the top of their division. Because they didn't need a whole lot of help. But I think they're obviously far less than perfect. But more than that, I think they're far more average than they are good or exceptional. But they've proven, and given them credit in this early going, that they're capable of beating the teams that they're supposed to beat up on. Because last night was standing, which is a 1-0 game. And by the way, the Red Sox are 5-5. They were, when we were doing our division previews a few weeks ago, Rich and I, there was, they're kind of like the wild card to me. Like they could go either way. Rich was a little bit more pessimistic on them than I am, but to me, the Red Sox could go either way. And so far, they've done nothing to change that. So besides that, against by far the best team they've played so far, the Rays, that is, they've destroyed these bad teams. Against Oakland, 11-0. 11-0. That's 2 consecutive games, and 9-5 in the first game. Then against the Nationals, 7-2, 10-6, 6-2. Scoring runs in every game, obliterating teams. And then Detroit, 5-1, 12-2, and 4-0. They killed these teams. Good for them. But let's not crown them just yet. You are talking about 3 of the 5 or so worst teams in all of baseball that they destroyed. Okay, good. They destroyed them. It wasn't close. And look, my Mets aren't doing that. They just lost a game to the Marlins. So I can't, you don't want to overreact either and take too much credit away from them. That's not what I'm trying to do, because look, you play the teams on your schedule, and if the team is bad and you kick their butt, that's all you can do, right? We'd be sitting here talking about how, you barely beat Detroit or you barely squeaked by Oakland if they won, like, say, 2-1, so it's not fair. So you give them credit, but at the same time, let's keep it into context and perspective who they are beating. Yes, they're beating them like drums. Great. But those teams are still awful. They're still terrible. And I think it's important to keep that in mind. As far as today's matchup, second game of their series with the Red Sox. This game is in the series is in Tampa. Tampa is going to be going against Corey Kluber. And looks like it will be who's starting for them? Effin, right? No. I'm way up ahead here. I'm sorry. So today is the 11th. I'm looking way ahead. It's McClanahan versus Whitlock. McClanahan for the Rays and Whitlock for the Red Sox. That game starts at 6:40. Tomorrow's game, which is the third in a 4-game set, will feature Effin and Sale. And then the fourth game on Thursday, is the one I was first looking at, will be Springs and Kluber. I'm willing to bet right now the Rays are not leaving this series undefeated. In fact, it wouldn't even surprise me if they lost tonight. But there you have it. So good job by the Rays. Interesting development for sure. I'm not going to go crazy about it. But, hey, what are you going to say? All right, let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We got a lot more to get to in hour 2. We have a top 5. We got lots of stuff to talk about, more NBA. So we'll have some news you can use, load management. We'll look at the Yankees. We'll look at the Mets. And we have, of course, the top 5. So a lot to get to. Top 5 coming up in a couple of minutes. And what are we talking about with the top 5? The 5 worst hanger-ons in sports history. Guys who did the most damage to their careers by playing too long. That's next, the Gary Ayd Show here on The Cave. Alrighty, welcome back to the Gary Ayd Show here on The Cave, cavetalkradio.com, and the Cave Talk Radio app. Great to have you aboard. Hour 2. A lot of stuff to get to this hour. We'll start here momentarily with the top 5. We have our Yankees game preview, our Mets game preview as well. Load management back in the news. And of course, well, news you can use. So we got a full hour 2. But right now, let's go ahead and get started. It's time for the top 5.
This is the moment we've all been waiting for. It's time for King Talk Radio's Top 5.
Alrighty, there we go. Thank you, Jack George. And today's top 5, in honor of our opening rant, which was Tiger Woods based. The question is, what are the 5 worst sports stars, hanger-oners of all time? Guys who played too long past their effective years. Now, this is a tricky one for me because I generally don't believe in that. I generally am of the belief that you should rip the jersey off me, that I will continue to be a professional athlete for as long as I can possibly get away with it, and that is that. But in light of the struggles of Woods and the pathetic, and I mean that in the literal definition of sad, state of his body, that's visually apparent for all who are willing to believe what their eyes are clearly telling them and have been for years. Got me thinking, okay, what are, like, taking my own personal views on this aside, what are some bad ones? Now, I can't swear that this list is going to be all or even predominantly star players, but it's my intention as we go through this to think of it as much as I can with star players, because like I said during the rant, the ability of a non-star player to, quote, wreck their legacy really is pretty minimal, because generally speaking, non-star players do not have legacies, right? They're not going to be remembered. You know, no one remembers, I don't know, Luke Jackson from Oregon's playing career, right? No one remembers, you know, fill in the blank. You know, Adam Ottavino, when he retires, isn't going to be remembered, right? No one's going to remember, I don't know, Devin Singletary of the Bills after he's done playing. You know, but Mike Singletary, yeah, it matters. Pedro Martinez, Randy Johnson, it matters. You know, so Tiger Woods, it matters. So as much as I can, I'm going to star laden this list because I think it makes a bigger impact. Okay, but that said, here are the names that come to mind. Number 1 is definitely Tiger Woods, which is what precipitated this. He's been so far gone for so many years now, over a decade, in fact, approaching a decade and a half, that it's just gotten to the preposterous. There's no one else like him that I can think of on this list. No one else here makes any sense. So he's definitely going to top it. Other guys who hung on too long, star players, Patrick Ewing comes to mind, playing a year in Orlando. You could argue even the year in Seattle, but certainly the year in Orlando, probably too long. So that his name comes to mind. Hakeem Olajuwon might have played a year or two too long. He's another name that comes to mind. A lot of people would say Washington Jordan on this list. I'm not going to. In fact, to me, what Jordan did in Washington is probably the most impressive achievement of his career. Playing at that high a level at that age after that many years off, I think is the most impressive thing he ever did. So he's not on this list for me. Some people would have him on this list, maybe even at the top or near the top of this list. He's not on mine, but I wanted to mention him. Dylan says Tom Brady played a year too long. Maybe, but he was still pretty good. But we could throw him on here for consideration before we call this down, and we'll see where, if he makes the cut here. He did lose his family. That's true. But that's as much their fault or her fault as his. So I don't know. But we'll keep him on there for now. Let's keep on moving. A few more names. A guy that, and maybe he, in the spirit of what made me think of this, of making this list, maybe the guy I'm about to mention is the poster child for it. Two of them, in fact. Juwan Howard and Jerry Stackhouse. Now, look it up. People know Juwan Howard for a few things. They know him for being part of the Fab Five. They know him more recently for being the sort of testy coach who punches and gets agitated during games. And they might know him for being the original Udonis Haslem, who might be on this list as well, hanging on, sitting on the bench in a uniform, but really being a coach. But look up his career. The early to middle part of his career, I would say the first 8 years or so of his career, this guy was a beast, an absolute beast. So he comes to mind, and because basically no one remembers the fact that he was such a beast, kind of illustrates what I'm talking about here. It kind of illustrates the effect of being too irrelevant for too long after being good or great. So he might really make this list based on, he really is a poster child for the insidious effect that a long period of irrelevance can have on a previously long period of excellence. Udonis Haslem comes to mind. Yeah, he did have that crazy 24-point game to end the year. But to me, look, I would say half his career, or close to it, was spent more or less as a coach. So clearly Miami valued him as a mentor. But ultimately he really was irrelevant as a player for a long time. But I don't put him on this list for one reason. He wasn't good enough, even when he was a relevant player on the court, to damage a legacy. In fact, in his case, his long period of inactivity and the kind of talk around it kind of made his legacy. He was a forgettable, good but forgettable fifth or fourth starter on some good Heat teams in the early 2000s. But really what he's going to be remembered for is the fact that he was on an active roster for so long past his use as a player. So in a weird way, in his case, that period of inactivity actually made his legacy, didn't detract from it. So he doesn't make this list. Vince Carter, he's a weird one because on one hand, yes, he played a really long time, but on the other hand, he turned himself into a great role player. See, I almost think of Vince as two careers in one, as two different players. Vince the star and Vince the consummate professional, well-liked veteran role player who still was relevant. Grant Hill also fits that type of mold where, due to injury in his case, his career was certainly deeply affected. What about Tracy McGrady? Anyone remember Tracy McGrady sitting on the bench, a shell of himself with the San Antonio Spurs at the end of his career, and then going out and trying out for the Skeeters, the same semi-pro baseball team that Roger Clemens pitched for when he was like 50? What about Tracy McGrady? That name certainly comes to mind. Maybe Darren Sproles played a year or two too long in the NFL, but I don't think that really affected him. I think Tom Glavine's longtime memories were somewhat affected by his last couple of years with the Mets. He was having ERAs in the 4s and 5s for several years. And I know as a young but not novice baseball fan then, I was probably 8 to 10 years into my following of this sport. I'm just old enough to remember how good Glavine was in Atlanta. So, but if I had been even 3 or so years younger, I might think of Tom Glavine the same way I was describing Tiger Woods at the start of the show, which is I know he was a great pitcher intellectually. I can look up his stats. I know that, but I don't feel it. I don't feel his greatness. I didn't experience his greatness. See, there's a difference between feeling and experiencing greatness and studying, knowing, and learning of one's greatness. And I'm probably the best person in the world to describe that because I challenge anyone to find someone more knowledgeable about deep sports history that predates their own memories by decades than I am. And so it pains me to say this, but there is no real replacement for living through something. Even as one of the more learned scholars of sports history that predates my own lifetime, I can't say that I can relate to something I didn't watch live or experience live or feel while it was happening in the same way as someone who did. That's just a fact. So with that said, Glavine to me is a great candidate for this list because this guy was great. Great. But he was bad his last few years. He really was. Pedro Martinez is another one who was really not very good his last several years. Yeah, Jason Peters is a good one. Yeah, that's a really good one. Yeah, that's a great example. Some would say Emmitt Smith, his last year or two in Arizona. I think Emmitt Smith served a big purpose those years. Maybe not for himself, but certainly for the franchise. I think his playing there for more than 1 year legitimized Arizona for a while as a place to go as a accomplished veteran and, be respected and have a chance to compete. And then a few years after he got there, they were in the Super Bowl led by Kurt Warner. So Emmitt Smith wasn't around for that, but I believe his signing and playing there for a few years laid the groundwork for that to happen in terms of legitimizing Arizona as a destination, at least for a while. They've since squandered that, but that's a different story. So this is a long list. All right, let's try to narrow this down a little bit. Tiger Woods is definitely atop the list for me. There's no question about that. I'm gonna go ahead and put I'm gonna put Tom Glavine. No, I'm gonna put Juwan Howard at 2 here because I do believe his many years of being nothing on the bench and his previous fame as a Fab Five member and his subsequent fame as a somewhat controversial and combative coach completely obfuscates and all but erases from history what he achieved during his prime as an NBA player. I don't think anyone really knows what kind of player this guy was for a period of about 5 years. I'm just gonna pull up his stats here real quick. Here we go. Juwan Howard. So his last year as a player was 2012, 2013. So he wasn't really an active participant in a team's rotation for a number of years. Let's just go ahead and narrow this down. His last year of being really active. All right. Apparently, that doesn't like me. I went to Basketball Reference and it didn't like me. So let's try this another way, shall we? His last year of being really active, I think, was about 8 years before he retired. Let me try this again on my phone, because that was not good. All right, so here are his stats. So Juwan Howard, for his career, averaged 13 points and 6 rebounds, but that is largely tempered by the many years of inactivity. His last year of being a relevant player was probably 2009, 2010. He played in 73 games, averaged 22 minutes a night. So his prime was from his rookie year of 94, 95 through, I would say, about 2003, 2004. In that time, his scoring numbers were as follows: 17, 22.1, 19.1, 18.5, 18.9, 14.9, 18, 18.2, 17.8, 14.6, 17.9, 18.4, 17. So this guy was a 17, 18 point a game scorer. On top of that, he was getting about 7, 8 rebounds a night, about a steal per game at one point, a little bit less, fewer assists. Guy was a good player. So, and then the wheels fell off. Starting with 2008, which was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years before his retirement, he averaged 1.1, 4.7, 4.1, 4.4, 6, 2.4, 1.5, and 3.0 in minimal action. By his last year, he played in a total of 7 games. So he's going to be number 2 for me because people forget that he even was a player in the NBA, let alone a really good one. Number 3 is probably going to be Tom Glavine. Number 4, I think Jason Peters was a really good one. You don't often think of that in terms of linemen, but that's a really good one. So I'll put him at number 4. Thank you for that one, Dylan. And number 5, I'm going to go with I guess number 5 we'll go with Pedro Martinez. So there you have it. That's my top 5 guys that hung on too long. Tiger Woods, Juwan Howard, Tom Glavine, Jason Peters, and Pedro Martinez. There's your top 5. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we got a lot more to get to. Coming up next, we will look at the Yankees, take a look at their upcoming game, maybe take a look at the Mets as well. We got load management news you can use to talk about as well. It's the Gary Ayd Show, back after this here on The Cave.
Are you like me? You have health insurance, but you don't have dental insurance. Do you need to get to the dentist right away? Maybe you need an implant or some other major service. Well, I found a dental insurance plan that's just right for you. It's called Spirit Dental. Spirit Dental offers a $100 lifetime deductible, a huge network of dentists. And here's the best part. There's no waiting periods. Yeah, that means you can call right now and have real dental insurance for you and your family tomorrow and get that immediate coverage you want. Spirit Dental has plans for just a few dollars a day, up to $5,000 annual maximum, and coverage for implants. Whatever age you are, the dental insurance you need is a free phone call away. Now don't wait, and be sure to ask about Spirit's vision plan. Here's the number: 800-631-9229. 800-631-9229. That's 800-631-9229.
Hey friend, life happens and you need money. What do? You call the special toll-free number we're about to give you. We will send you a link to your phone with details on how you can loan up to $5,000. Couldn't you use $5,000 to pay for your rent, pay grocery bills, get your car repaired, or whatever you need? It's up to you. We don't care. We're just here to lend you the money. And we'll lend people money with good, bad, or no credit at all. Of course, some terms and conditions apply, and you'll see those on the link we're going to send you. So if you need up to $5,000 maybe as soon as the next business day, call this number right now. We will text you a free link with details.
Paid for by Money Mutual. Call 800-586-7112. 800-586-7112. 800-586-7112. That's 800-586-7112.
All righty. So tonight you have the Yankees going up against the Cleveland Indians. Some will call them the Guardians. I call them the Indians. That's just how I roll here. Garrett Cole is on the hill for the Yankees versus Gaddis for the Indians. And that's obviously probably bad news for Cleveland. The line reflects that. Yankees are minus 162, so about a little more than half a point favored. Looking at the lineups for today, the projected Yankee lineup: LeMahieu, Judge, Rizzo, Stanton are the top four. Torres, Oswaldo Cabrera, Jose Trevino, Frenchie Cordero, and Anthony Volpe are the bottom three. One thing you noticed about this lineup for the Yankees, it's pretty balanced. You have Cabrera, who I believe is a switch hitter. Cordero is a lefty. Rizzo is a lefty. So you have 1, 2, 3 guys who hit lefty or can. 2 are lefties, 1 is a switch, versus 5 righties. That's a pretty good lineup in terms of balance. It still drives me crazy seeing Judge in the 2-hole. But hey. Now, the one thing that's interesting in this game that gives it an X factor, a wild card factor, if you will, none of the Yankee starters have any experience hitting against Gaddis. I think is he making his major league debut or no, he's not, but they've never hit against him. Everyone's hit against him, though, because on the season he's 0 for 2, and he has 5 strikeouts, 3 walks, and has an 18.41 ERA. So opponents are batting 405 against him. So I'm not too sure the Yankees are worried about this. Garrett Cole is obviously Garrett Cole. So there you go. I think ultimately, looking at some of these numbers, the Yankees are in a good spot. There's not many guys in this Cleveland lineup that have hit Cole particularly well. Jose Ramirez is probably the best. He also has a lot of experience against him, almost 30 at-bats. In those 27 at-bats, he has 8 hits for a 296 average. He does have 2 home runs and has driven in 6 against Cole. Mike Zunino is actually the most experienced batter against Garrett Cole. He's faced against him 33 times, but he's not done well. He's 5 of those 33 for a 152 average. So that's probably bad. And then let's see. A lot of other batters have double-digit at-bats against Cole. In fact, the only ones in the starting lineup for the Indians that don't are Will Brennan with 4 and Josh Bell with 3. Running down that lineup real quick, Stephen Kwan, Ahmad Rosario, Jose Ramirez are your top 3. Josh Naylor, bats cleanup. The first baseman, DH Josh Bell is 5th. Andreas Jimenez, the former Met, is batting 6th, playing 2nd. Will Brennan is batting 7th and is in right field. Catcher Mike Zunino is batting 8th, and Miles Straw, the center fielder, bats 9th. So it's just Bell and Brennan that don't have any experience hitting against Cole. 3 and 4 at bats against him, respectively. Problem is, the guys that do have experience against him in this lineup, not done well. Kwan, 2 for 11. Rosario, 1 for 13, a .77 batting average. We mentioned Ramirez. He's done pretty well. Naylor's been pretty decent as well. 5 of 18, 3 home runs for a 278 lifetime average. All those home runs have been solo shots. Jimenez has been 4 of 15. It's not great. It's not terrible. 267. Zunino is awful at 5 for 33. And Straw, even worse, percentage-wise anyway, at 2 for 16. So if you're the Yankees, you got to feel pretty good about today. This is not the game I would be betting. If you want to bet the Yankees to win, go ahead and do that. You're going to lay some odds there at minus 162. The over-under is 8. I would probably bet the under on that. I could see the Yankees winning this game like 5-0 or 6-1 or something like that. I just don't think the Guardians are going to do much. So I would bet the under there. And then to get your odds up nice, maybe throw in some type of parlay. Just, hey, Aaron Judge to get a home run because, well, he does that. So, and the guy he's facing has an 18+ ERA. So there you go. So that would be, if I was going to play this game from a betting perspective, that's probably what I would do. Depending on what kind of odds you got. If you can get away with betting the Yankees to win and betting the under and get odds that you're comfortable with, a payout that you're comfortable with, that's probably the safest thing to do. I think the under is pretty safe in this game. I think it's almost a guarantee the Yankees win this game. But if you want to be a little bit more edgy, bump your odds up a little bit more and make it a parlay, maybe throw in an Aaron Judge home run just for good measure. So, hey, that could be a lot of fun. That could be a whole lot of fun. Or it could end up being terrible. You never know. So, anyway, so the Yankees playing the Guardians, the Indians, whatever you want to call tonight. This is going to be a rough game, I think, for the Indians. I really do. I think they're in a lot of trouble. The Yankees right now sit at 6-4. They are 4 games back of the Rays, who, as we said earlier, haven't lost yet at 10-0. They are tied with the Toronto Blue Jays. The Indians, meanwhile, sit atop the AL Central at 7-4, off to a pretty good start. Have won 2 in a row. They're a half game clear of Minnesota, 2 games clear of Chicago. And of course, Detroit and Kansas City hanging out in the basement. That's where they live. I think they pay rent down there. There's so much. Yankees schedule, if you take a look at their upcoming schedule, let's do that real quick. They're sitting pretty right now at 6-4. They lost yesterday to the Guardians 3-2, but they might have found themselves a good relief pitcher in Colton Brewer, who threw 3 really good innings in a real desperate, difficult situation. And I think with the injuries to Canely and others, I think having him there, don't be surprised if he becomes a factor, at least short term, for this Yankees team. I think that's a name to watch, Colton Brewer. If you play fantasy sports, that's a name to keep an eye on. I actually picked him up on my fantasy team today. So there you have it. Looking at Cleveland, we mentioned tonight the Yankees are playing a 3-game set. They lost game 1 yesterday, 3-2. They're playing the middle match today, and then they'll finish up in Cleveland tomorrow. No starter has been announced for the Indians as of yet. Schmidt will take the bump for the Yankees tomorrow. All right, there you have it. That is your Yankee preview. We'll take a quick break. By the way, today's game starts at 6:10. We're going to come back. We'll do the same thing for the Mets. It's the Gary Ayd Show. Back after this here on The Cave.
Are you like me? You have health insurance, but you don't have dental insurance. Do you need to get to the dentist right away? Maybe you need an implant or some other major service. Well, I found a dental insurance plan that's just right for you. It's called Spirit Dental. Spirit Dental offers a $100 lifetime deductible, a huge network of dentists. And here's the best part. There's no waiting periods. Yeah, that means you can call right now and have real dental insurance for you and your family tomorrow and get that immediate coverage you want. Spirit Dental has plans for just a few dollars a day, up to $5,000 annual maximum, and coverage for implants. Whatever age you are, the dental insurance you need is a free phone call away. Now don't wait, and be sure to ask about Spirit's vision plan. Here's the number: 800-631-9229. 800-631-9229. That's 800-631-9229.
Hey friend, life happens and you need money. What do? You call the special toll-free number we're about to give you. We will send you a link to your phone with details on how you can loan up to $5,000. Couldn't you use $5,000 to pay for your rent, pay grocery bills, get your car repaired, or whatever you need? It's up to you. We don't care. We're just here to lend you the money. And we'll lend people money with good, bad, or no credit at all. Of course, some terms and conditions apply, and you'll see those on the link we're going to send you. So if you need up to $5,000 maybe as soon as the next business day, call this number right now. We will text you a free link with details.
Paid for by Money Mutual. Call 800-586-7112. 800-586-7112. 800-586-7112. That's 800-586-7112.
All righty, we're back here on the Gary Ayd Show. We continue marching on all the way till noon here on Cave Talk Radio. It's great to have you aboard. Gary Ayd with you. Now taking a look, we broke down the Yankees. Let's go shift gears and take a look at my Mets. My Mets not off to the best start in the world. Could be worse, could always be better. I'll tell you what, the injury to Diaz looms large all season. It really does. That's not something that I'm just going to forget about as the year goes on. That completely changes the tenor of games because he was one of the closers, maybe the only active closer. There might be one or two more. One of a handful with fingers left over. We'll put it that way. That's safe to say. That literally shortened the game. He came in last year, you were not winning. If you were down when Diaz took the hill, you lost. That is such a tactical advantage, but also a psychological advantage because it has ripple effects to earlier innings, right? Because think about this. If you know in your head or your heart that, okay, let's say let's say it's the Padres and you're down 4-2 to the Mets in like the fifth or sixth inning. You're going to start pressing a little bit because you know you only have a couple innings. So every at bat, every situation, every inning becomes more stressful, becomes more high leverage, as they like to use the term these days. You press a little bit because you're in a sense rushing it because you know you're running out of time. And you start that process earlier than you would against a team that didn't have a closer of that caliber, right? So that there's that ripple effect where Diaz's looming presence come in. Yankees benefited from this for years and years with Rivera. The looming presence of that automatic out-getter being forthcoming makes you go into press mode a little bit earlier than you normally would. So in effect, he is somewhat pitching multiple innings, even though he's only in there for one. And that has a huge effect. You take that out. No one's scared of anyone coming out of the Mets bullpen right now. No one's afraid of any of these guys. They have David Peterson going today against Ryan Withers playing San Diego. So there you have it. If you're the Mets, that Diaz loss, I'm sorry, that's a big deal. That knocked them out of World Series contenders, as far as I'm concerned. Now, they had a great game last night. They won 5-0. That was really good to see. Playing at home, they're now 6-5 on the year. San Diego has the same record. Looking at sort of the box score in this one, Mets got some production from, looks like Nimmo had a hit, scored 2 runs. Lindor, the big blow, had a 2-run home run, and of course scored a run there. So, sorry, it was a 2-run double. Excuse me, not a home run, it's a 2-run double, and scored later on. Nothing from Alonso. He's off to a slow start. Their bats got to wake up. You look at this team right now. Their batting average is awful up and down the lineup. Now I know it's early, Gary. Yeah, I know. But what am I just supposed to ignore baseball and not talk about it until what? I mean, come on. I hate that. Oh, it's early. Yeah, I know it's early, but the games matter. They still count. They tally up 162. They don't say, oh, it's early, we don't count these games until there's been 80 played, then we start counting them. No, they all matter. So it's never too early to look at numbers and react to them. That doesn't mean I'm married to this. Look, right now, Pete Alonso stinks. He was 0 for 4 yesterday. He struck out. He's hitting .214 for the season. Am I saying Pete Alonso stinks? Of course not. He's my favorite player. He's a great player. He's the fastest guy to 150. But he stinks right now. He goes 3 for 5 today, and that changes, right? But you talk about it every day. Jeff McNeil only hitting 250. Vogelbach, same thing. I mean, these guys aren't good right now. Nimmo's hitting 200. Lindor's hitting 216. We mentioned Pete at 214. Canna's hitting 230. Guillaume is in the lineup. He said yesterday he's hitting 211. Escobar's hitting 118. Nito, the catcher, is 158. I mean, this is awful. These are bad numbers, guys. But, they won yesterday. Big hit by Lindor. Hopefully, it's a sign of things to come. He's starting to wake up a little bit. McNeil had a couple RBIs in this game. So that was good for him. So we'll see. Looking at tonight's lineup for the Mets in game 2 of this series with the Padres, let's find ourselves our Mets game, shall we? Just going down the list here. Marlins and Phillies. That should be an interesting game. Paying close attention to that one if you're the Mets. Division rival, of course. Rays and Red Sox. We talked about that already. Blue Jays and Tigers. Where are you? Mets and Padres. There we go. So the Mets are at home. They are slight favorites, minus 143. Over under is 8.5. Sounds a little high to me, particularly given the way the Mets offense is played, but maybe not. Should be a nice night out in New York today, so that's good. As far as the pitching matchup, you have Weathers for the Padres against David Peterson for the Mets. Mets, not a lot of experience against Withers, just 2 combined at bats with their current lineup against Withers. So, no, he's a total unknown. Meanwhile, Xander Bogaerts and the rest of the Padres lineup has some experience, but not a ton against Peterson. Looks like about 20 at bats. Let's see, 6 and 5 is 11, plus 3 is 14, plus 2 is 16. 2 more is 18. Exactly 20 at bats across the lineup. Manny Machado 1 for 2, and Austin Nola 1 for 1. Besides that, no one's touched him. So there's not a lot of data here to confidently feel one way or the other in this game in terms of when you're looking at the matchups of a lineup versus a pitcher and how they've historically fared. There's not a lot of history here. I'll just say this. That lineup for the Padres is scary. It's way better than the Mets lineup. Bogaerts, Machado, Soto, Cruz, Cronenworth. That is a scary 1 through 5. The rest of these guys, the bottom third of their lineup or so, doesn't scare me too much. Kim doesn't scare me. Nola doesn't scare me. Grisham doesn't scare me. Azakar doesn't scare me. But, the same is true for the Mets lineup, right? No one's going to be afraid of Tommy Pham, Eduardo Escobar. Francisco Alvarez is in the lineup today. So the projected lineup for the Mets, just in case you're wondering, Brandon Nimmo, Starling Marte, Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso, Francisco Alvarez, Tommy Pham, Jeff McNeil, Eduardo Escobar, and Mark Canha. These are projected lineups. Could change, but that's where we're at right now. What time does the game start tonight? It's an evening game, isn't it? I think it's an evening game. 7 o'clock, so 7:10. So this could very well change. We're obviously 6 hours or a little under 6 hours ahead of schedule here. But getting back to my point, the bottom third of the Padres lineup isn't scaring anybody, but the Mets lineup is not. I mean, Tommy Pham's not going to worry you. Not worried about Escobar. I'm not super worried about Canha. McNeil's a good hitter, but doesn't have a lot of power. But I like the Mets in this game tonight. I really do. I actually like if you do bat McNeil 7th, I like that, and I'll tell you why. Because in a more conventional lineup, you might have him batting 5th, protecting Alonso. Now, he doesn't have the power, but he's a guy who puts the bat on the ball, so you don't want to put guys on base in front of him because he can drive runs in. But by batting him 7th and Alvarez 5th and sandwiching Pham in between the two, you prevent any run of, quote, easier outs. Because if, let's say, you switched Pham and Alvarez. So, I'm sorry, McNeil and Alvarez. So if I put McNeil 5th and I have Alvarez 7th. He's a rookie. We don't know what we're going to get. You'd have 6 through 8. You'd have Pham, Alvarez, and Escobar. That's a relatively easy 3 to go through in a half inning if you're a pitcher. And then Mark Canha is behind them at 9. But by putting McNeil in the middle, now you go Alvarez, then Pham, who's an easier out. Now you got McNeil, though, then Escobar and Canha. So I think it's a little bit better. It breaks it up a little bit. So I think that's a pretty good lineup card by Buck Showalter if that ends up being the way he goes. I think the Mets win tonight. From a betting perspective, if I was betting this game, I'd probably, the more I think about it, I actually think the over is reasonable. I'd probably bet the over. Team the Mets winning this game like 6-3 or something like that. 6-4. So I would bet the over, bet the Mets to win. And if I was going to do anything, I would bet on Francisco Lindor today. And maybe this is just wishful thinking. It probably is. But that double he had yesterday felt big for him. It was an emotional. It wasn't just a good double to break a bad streak or something, which is, often good enough. There was an emotional level to that double. There was a significance to it that, gave the team an emotional jolt, gave him an emotional jolt. And I think it's more likely to carry over with some positive effects. So I would bet Lindor to get a hit today, the Mets to win, and the over-under of 8.5. That would be my 3-legged parlay in this game. All right, there we go. That is the Mets preview. We got the Yankees done as well. For those of you wondering, out-of-town baseball today, the remaining schedule is as follows. You have the Baltimore Orioles hosting the A's. That's a 6:35 first pitch. Kyle Muller versus Grayson Rodriguez. Then Houston is traveling to Pittsburgh to take on the Pirates. Christian Javier versus Mitch Keller. Tampa Bay Rays host the Sox in their second game of their 4-game set. Garrett Whitlock versus Shane McClanahan of the hometown Rays. Philly hosting Miami. Jesus Luzardo versus Aaron Nola. Matt Manning takes on Alek Manoah in the Toronto hosting Detroit matchup. That's a 7:07 first pitch. TBS has the Met game tonight. We talked about that one. Looking at the other game, Cincinnati is traveling to Atlanta. Luis Cessa versus Kyle Wright is the pitching matchup. Lance Lynn and Pablo Lopez duke it out for Chicago. The White Sox, that is, visiting the Twins. Chicago Cubs at home hosting Seattle. Chris Flexen versus Hayden Wesneski for Chicago. Texas hosts Kansas City. It's Jordan Lyles for the Royals. Jacob deGrom for the Texans, or for the Rangers, excuse me. Colorado is home to St. Louis. Mike McCollis and Kyle Freeland are your pitchers. Joshua Gray and Shohei Ohtani battle it out for Washington and, of course, the Angels, respectively. That game is on ESPN Plus, 9:38 first pitch. Milwaukee, Jack George travels to Arizona to take on the surprising early Diamondbacks. Corbin Burns versus Merrill Kelly. And lastly, you have the Dodgers going up against their traditional rival, the Giants, in San Francisco. Dustin May versus Alex Wood. Those are your baseball games for tonight. That will do it for this segment. We'll be right back, and we will continue on. We got more to get to. We got news you can use, load management as well. It's the Gary Ayd Show. Back after this here on The Cave.
Coffee Lovers Middletown is now officially home to the home run of our favorite beverage, Days Coffee. Days patented blend contains approximately 85% less caffeine than other coffees, which makes it better for you, yet unlike decaf coffee, still gives you that great pickup and tastes amazing. Formulated by a retired cancer pathologist, Dr. Grant Lee, Days Coffee is fermented with a patented enzyme that until now required a complex and thus expensive sourcing and production process. With Dr. Lee's formulation, this enzyme's great health benefits can now be brought to your cup quicker, easier, and cheaper than ever before. Here's how you get a hold of this game-changing cup of joe. Go over to RadioOnlyDeals.com and get a $4 gift certificate to Days Coffee for just $2. That's RadioOnlyDeals.com to buy your single-use digital gift certificate for Days Coffee. RadioOnlyDeals.com. That's RadioOnlyDeals.com. Enjoy the preferred coffee of the Gary Ayd Show. Enjoy Days Coffee.
Do you want to save money on your next flight? Then pick up the phone and call. That's right, call. Because the best prices are not online. They're with SmartFares. See, SmartFares has special deals with the airlines. When they have unsold seats, they use SmartFares to fill them. So you get airline tickets at crazy low prices. They have access to great prices and discounts at over 500 different airlines. Plus 300,000 hotels and rental car companies. Their prices are too low to publish online. With the extra money you'll save, you can book another trip or treat yourself to dinner or shopping. So stop searching all of those travel sites to find the lowest price on your next flight. Let one of our SmartFares expert travel agents find the best price for you. Call SmartFares today and get ready to see the world with a fat wallet.
800-370-2460. 800-370-2460. 800-370-2460. That's 800-370-2460.
Come on, you watch the news. Be prepared to pay more taxes. Then, if you owe back taxes or haven't filed in a few years, get ready. The IRS, the largest collection agency in the world, will be coming after you with the power to collect taxes by any means they want to. Hey, they can freeze your bank account, your passport, even padlock your business. Oh, good times. Look, if the IRS claims you owe them $5,000 or more in back taxes and they're coming after you, don't panic. Call my friends at Get a Tax Lawyer first. Their job is to negotiate with the IRS and save you money. They're experts at it. That's all they do, and you can trust them. In some cases, they have reduced a $50,000 tax bill to less than $1,000. If you owe the IRS $5,000 or more in back taxes, call now for a free consultation.
Call 800-649-8617. 800-649-8617. 800-649-8617. That's 800-649-8617.
All righty, we're back here on the Gary Ayd Show. Last few minutes of the show. Before we get to news you can use, there was a comment in a blog I follow, Fadeaway, which is a basketball blog. It's not the most well-written thing, but it does have a massive following, a huge social footprint, and is generally a conversation starter. You're not going to go there for insight or education, but it can give you thought nuggets from time to time. And there was recently an unnamed NBA executive, who basically said what I've been saying for years, which is the idea of load management and the season being too long and all this other stuff that the players complain about, media complains about, everyone seems to complain about. This is what he said, and I couldn't agree more. If you made the season 60 games, the players would find a way to load management down to 40. That's exactly right. And so the question is, how do you fix this? There's really not an easy answer. The nuclear option, which is never going to happen, would never be broached by the owners, would never be accepted by the players without a major ugly incident. Labor incident, I mean, the only way to assure this wouldn't happen would be a two-frontal assault on the very bedrock of a lot of the NBA's current business structure. The first front would be returning decision-making power, or at least a lot of it, in terms of when they play versus not play with perceived injuries, to the players. I think a lot of people don't realize a lot of that is not in their hands. Most of it's not in their hands. And in fact, sometimes the players have no say in the matter. And then the second piece along that line, which would be the really ugly one, you don't get paid for games you don't play in. Maybe you get a certain number of PTO days like the rest of us. Maybe it's 10, 5, it's a week, based on seniority. Like if you built a normal vacation sick day schedule that most of us in the real world are familiar with and applied it to the NBA season. The NBA season runs mid-October through early mid-June. So let's say October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June. We'll say 8 months because October and June are basically half months. And realistically, let's just stick to the regular season because we're not even talking about the playoffs. Let's just stick to the regular season, and you get maybe a new allotment for these in the playoffs if you make it. Regular season is October through April, so we'll count October and April as a half month each, and then we'll go November, December, January, February, March. So it's 6 months. So a 6-month season. Let's say you get 10 games of PTO. And if you don't use it, you get paid bonus, your game rate for a game. Like, so if you play all 82 games, you would get paid for 92. So it'd be like a bonus, basically, for being available. That's the way you solve this. That's how you could solve this. Now, I am not saying that this should be pushed out there. I think the load management thing is a big issue. I don't think it's an issue that you drop a nuclear bomb, a proverbial nuclear bomb, on your own platform for, because that's what this would be. But if you really wanted to solve it, that's the way you solve it. That's just the way it is. So I think ultimately, if you're a fan of the NBA, this load management thing is a problem. And I agree with this general manager. If you give an inch, they're going to take a mile. Cutting the games is not the answer, because they're not going to all of a sudden go from, okay, now that it's only 65 games or 70 games or whatever you cut it to, now that it's only that, we're going to play every game and we're going to play hard. No, that's not what's going to happen. They're going to use the same crap, the same excuses, the same analytic numbers, the same logic of preserving the investment, elongating their prime, all this other stuff that they say. Those same arguments are going to be applied. And now they're just going to be applied to cutting into the remainder of fewer games. They're not going to want to take a pay cut. They're not going to want to take a smaller percentage of revenues. And at some point, it becomes unsustainable for the owners. Like, you can't go that route. You can't really go the route I described before, although the route I described would solve the problem, but it would maybe blow up the league. So that's not really an option either. The most realistic option here to me for solving load management is to somehow add value to the regular season beyond beyond what currently exists. We've become so fixated on winning championships that if you finish second, you finish last. Of course, the value of the regular season, the perceived value by the players and the teams and the organizations, of course it's gone down. How could it not in a culture like that? So you have to reinstill some value to the regular season. And maybe the way you do that is with some type of shortened playoffs. Because let's be honest, I like the play-in tournament. I really do. I think it's a cool invention. I think it adds a little bit of sudden death to a otherwise series-based tournament, and I do like it. So I'm in favor of keeping that. But maybe we curtail it. Maybe instead of seeds 7 through 10, the play-in tournament is seeds 4 through I guess it would be 6, right? So because it's 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, so 4, 5, 6. So I guess it'd be 4 through 7. So it's 4 through 7. 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep. 4 through 7. And in that case, the regular season matters a whole lot more because you got to come in 7th to even qualify for the playoffs. And then, but wait, there's more. This is the other thing I would do. You do what I said the other day with the draft picks. You randomize it. There's no correlation to your record and where you pick. If you do those two things, there's no benefit to tanking. Maybe you up the and maybe you give teams that qualify for the playoffs a 1 year an additional like mid-level exception or something for the following season. It's a 1 year almost reward for being a good team. You do those kind of things, and all of a sudden, if I'm sitting in 8th with 2 weeks to go, or let's say I'm sitting 3 games out of the playoffs near the trade deadline. I care a great deal about getting that done. I care a great deal about making the playoffs because there's no draft benefit to not making it. And if I do make it, I can improve my team more than the guy who doesn't make it next year with this added exemption. And ostensibly, I have a reasonable shot because really, if you only had the top 7 teams going into the play-in tournament, and that means there would be 14 teams who are in the whole thing. And then in the final round, you have 10 teams, right? Total. That's the top third of the league. You're going to get a cream of the crop. That would help load management some because it de-incentivizes losing. It adds incentive to succeeding, and it tightens the window with which you have to qualify for the playoffs. It probably doesn't solve the whole thing because all of those things are still predicated on the idea that players want to be as competitive as they can every game, which is not always the case. But I think it would help. There's no perfect way to solve it short of tying their paychecks directly to games played in some way. And the league's never going to go for that. The players union would never go for that. But I think this would help. I think it would help the product, and I think it would be really cool. All right, well, that does it for us. Good stuff today. We'll be back tomorrow. A lot of Bomber and Smash interviews over the next couple of days. We'll have a schedule posted on our Facebook page. If you haven't done so already, follow us, facebook.com/Cave Talk Radio NY. I'm Gary Ayd. See you tomorrow. This is the Gary Ayd Show here on The Cave.